The morning sun broke gently over the fields of northern Maine, casting a golden shimmer across the dewy grass. Jack Emery grunted as he drove the post digger deeper into the earth. The air was crisp, the kind that hinted at autumn just around the corner. Behind him, a stretch of wire fencing lay unrolled, ready to be secured. This was supposed to be a simple job. Install a boundary fence for a newly purchased property. Nothing complicated, nothing strange. But the clang echoed differently this time. Jack stopped, sweat trickling down the side of his temple. He struck again, metal against metal, sharp and final. The ground beneath his boots suddenly felt less like soil and more like something out of place. His crewmate Leo approached from the other side of the trench. "You hit something?" Jack nodded, kneeling to clear the loose dirt with his hands. As he brushed away the soil, a circular edge emerged. Cold, rusted steel, buried at least 4 feet deep. It was a hatch. Heavy, industrial, no markings, no handle. "Must be some old septic tank or storm shelter," Leo guessed, but his voice lacked conviction. Jack leaned closer. Weld marks circled the perimeter, fused tight, not from outside, but from within. Whoever had sealed this hadn't wanted something to get in. They wanted something to stay inside. Before we uncover what lies beneath, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more real-world mysteries and gripping stories just like this one. Trust me, this is only the beginning. Jack stood up slowly, glancing over the quiet expanse of forest that bordered the field. Birds chirped as usual, the wind rustled the pines, but something felt off. It wasn't just the hatch. It was the silence beneath it. No echo when they knocked, no resonance, as if it opened into a void. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Not to post, just to remember. A record, in case this turned into something more. The property owner, some tech investor from Boston, had said nothing about underground structures. Jack made a mental note to call him. Leo tapped the metal with a wrench. "Could be military," he said. "We're not far from old training grounds, right?" "Could be," Jack muttered, already walking back to the truck to grab a crowbar. The hatch wasn't budging on its own, and the longer he looked at it, the more his gut twisted. By late afternoon, most of the surrounding dirt had been cleared. The hatch was nearly 6 feet across, round with a beveled edge. Welds encircled it like scars. No latches, no bolts, just fused metal and rust. Leo lit a cigarette, exhaling slowly. "We could call someone, like official someone." Jack didn't answer. His eyes were locked on a faint marking now visible on the surface. Just scratches maybe, but they curved deliberately. A shape. No, a symbol, like a triangle inside a circle, crossed by a single vertical line. Nothing he recognized, but not random either. He crouched again, pressing his ear to the cold steel. Nothing, not a whisper. Then he heard it. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. A hum, low and rhythmic, like machinery left running far below. He jumped back, heart pounding, scanning the surrounding woods. Still no movement, still no sign of life beyond them. Jack stood, suddenly certain. This wasn't part of the job. This was something forgotten, buried on purpose. And somehow, still alive. They packed up as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the trench. Jack didn't say much as he drove home that night, but the sound, that low pulsing hum, stayed with him long after he left the field behind. And in his bones, he knew, they had unearthed something that should have remained sealed. The next morning, Jack stood at the edge of the trench again, coffee in hand, eyes fixed on the hatch. The hum was gone. Or maybe it had never been there to begin with. Maybe his mind had conjured it, a trick of fatigue and imagination, but he doubted it. He didn't return alone. Emily Harper arrived just past 9, stepping out of a dusty green Subaru with a satchel of notebooks and rolled-up maps. She was in her early 30s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, her boots already streaked with mud. She moved with purpose, curiosity radiating from her. "I came as soon as I saw the picture," she said, holding up her phone. "That symbol on the hatch?" "I've seen it before." Jack didn't know her well. A friend of the property owner, she had a reputation for researching old military sites and obscure Cold War operations. He'd dismissed it as a hobby, But now, watching her pull out a folded map marked with red ink and dated references, he paid closer attention. "It's a containment mark," Emily continued, "used unofficially during the 50s and 60s. Site's not meant to be found again. Black projects, no records, just legends." She knelt beside the hatch and ran her fingers over the rusted edge. The welds matched the style of field-sealed bunkers. But from the inside, that's not standard protocol. Jack shifted, uneasy. "You think it's military?" "I think it was," she said. But not anymore. Emily spread out a document over the hood of Jack's truck. It was a declassified aerial photograph dated 1964. The surrounding area looked different. Fewer trees, more clearings. But there was a structure right where they stood. Rectangular, concrete. And then, in photos from the next year, it was gone. "Whatever was here," she said. "Someone made sure it vanished." The official property sale lists the land as unimproved since 1971. No mention of demolition or transfer. It's like they scrubbed it. Jack rubbed his jaw. "And you think someone buried it?" "No. I think someone buried themselves." They stood in silence for a moment, letting that possibility hang heavy between them. Emily asked for soil samples, then stepped into the trench with practiced ease. She pointed out small traces, discoloration, the texture near the hatch, a faint odor of old oil and ozone. This isn't just an old shelter. This was active, sealed deliberately, not decades ago, more recently than we'd guess. Jack stared down. "You're saying someone's been here?" Emily looked up. "I'm saying someone might still be." He exhaled, slow and deliberate. "That humming yesterday. You heard something?" Jack nodded. "Low, like a machine. Almost felt it more than heard it." Emily frowned. "Then we don't touch anything else. Not until we know what's inside. If this was a containment site, there could be chemical hazards, or worse." "Worse," Jack echoed. Emily met his gaze. Biological, psychological. This was Cold War era. They were experimenting with things they didn't understand. Sometimes not even weapons, just ideas, the human mind, sleep deprivation, isolation studies, paranormal research. Some of it didn't stop when the war did. Jack glanced toward the woods, suddenly aware of how quiet everything had become. Even the birds seemed to avoid the clearing now. "I need to go deeper into the archives," Emily said. "There might be references, project names, logs, anything, but I'll need time." "You'll get it," Jack said, "but I'm not leaving that thing alone." She paused. "You're not thinking of opening it?" "Not yet," he replied, "but I need to know what I'm guarding." Emily packed her things, her mind already racing ahead. "If what I suspect is true, Jack, that hatch isn't just history. It's a door. And we have no idea what's on the other side." The wind carried a sharper edge that morning, as if nature itself sensed something shifting. Jack stood at the trench's edge, arms crossed, the early light casting long shadows across the disturbed earth. He hadn't slept much. The sound, the hum, still echoed in his mind, even though it hadn't returned. Leo arrived early, carrying the portable generator and a set of industrial tools. Jack had made the call late the night before, telling him to bring the heavy gear. He hadn't told Emily, not yet. "This is crazy," Leo muttered, setting up the acetylene torch. "You don't even know what's down there." "I don't care," Jack replied. "Whatever it is, it's been buried too long." "I need answers." Leo hesitated but nodded. Years of shared tours and silent trust ran deep between them. Once the tools roared to life, the air filled with sparks and the acrid scent of burning metal. The first weld broke after 20 minutes. The steel hissed and popped under the heat, resisting even now as if it knew it wasn't meant to be opened. By the time Emily arrived, the final seam was nearly cut. "What are you doing?" she shouted, boots crunching across gravel as she rushed to the hatch. "Getting us closer to the truth," Jack said without looking up. "I told you this could be dangerous." "We'll never know unless we look," he interrupted. "You said yourself someone might still be inside." "If that's true, we have a responsibility." Emily stared at him, frustration battling fear in her eyes, but it was too late to stop it now. The last weld split with a screech, and silence followed. A long, deep quiet. Then the hatch groaned. It shifted slowly, metal grinding against metal as if reluctant to surrender its contents. Jack stepped back, crowbar in hand, heart pounding. Leo grabbed a flashlight and leaned in. Smells like old air, mildew, rot. Together they heaved. The hatch lifted just enough to reveal darkness beneath, a void swallowed in shadows. A metal staircase spiraled down, slick with condensation, disappearing into the unknown. Emily stood at the edge, eyes wide. "You really want to go down there?" Jack nodded once. "I have to." She sighed, then pulled a small recorder from her bag. "Then I'm going with you. If anything happens, the world needs to know." Leo handed them both headlamps. "I'll stay topside. If you're not back in 30 minutes, I'm calling in everything I can." The descent was slow. Each step groaned beneath their weight, echoing off the curved walls. The air grew colder the deeper they went, thick with the scent of rust and time. Jack counted the steps silently. 43, 44. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a narrow corridor lined with corroded pipes and flickering emergency lights. Dust hung in the air like mist. The hum had returned, softer now. A distant throb felt more than heard. Emily pointed ahead. "There's power. At least minimal systems. That's not natural." They moved carefully, their footsteps muffled on the concrete floor. To the right, a steel door stood ajar, its hinges warped with age. Inside, a control room blinked with dim monitors, none fully alive but not fully dead either. Paperwork lay scattered across the floor, most of it unreadable. But on the wall, clear as day, the stenciled words, "Operation Deep Cell, 1962. Jack's mouth went dry. Emily stepped closer, reading it aloud. This was a real site, an operational bunker, and it hasn't been touched in decades. She turned to him, face pale. "Jack, this wasn't abandoned, it was sealed. It was... and someone, maybe something, is still keeping it alive." From deeper within the corridor came a sound, not a hum, not a groan, a thump, once, then silence. The corridor seemed to stretch longer with every step. The air, thick with the scent of rust and mildew, carried a weight that pressed against Jack's chest. Emily stayed close, her flashlight scanning the cracked tiles and exposed wiring. Despite the decay, the bunker hadn't entirely died. It pulsed faintly, alive in fragments. Another thump echoed ahead. Distant, but unmistakable. Jack tightened his grip on the crowbar, heart thrumming in rhythm with the bunker's pulse. Emily whispered, "It's coming from the left wing." Farther in. They passed doors, each marked with faded labels. Quarters A3, observation, containment. Most were sealed shut. The few open rooms offered little. Rusted beds, scattered papers, overturned chairs. No signs of recent movement. Only shadows that clung to the corners. Then they found the central chamber. The door had once been reinforced, steel at least 6 inches thick, but now stood ajar. Jack stepped through first. Inside was a wide control room, circular, with terminals arranged like petals around a dormant center. Monitors blinked faint green, powered by a backup system still clinging to life. In the middle of the room, beneath a cracked dome of reinforced glass, stood a single observation platform. Emily approached a control panel beside it. Her fingers brushed away dust from a console labeled Deep Cell Level 2 Access. "Jack," she said, voice low, "this wasn't a bunker, it was a lab." She tapped the console, and a schematic flickered to life. Below them, 2 levels deeper, were rooms labeled Observation Cells, Isolation Tanks, and one in bold, Subject Containment. Jack scanned the diagram, noting the sealed pathways and emergency locks. They were holding something down there, Emily swallowed, or someone. To the left of the chamber, another corridor branched out. This one was colder, lined with heavier doors. They passed broken lights, their steps crunching on shattered glass. Then they reached the end, a thick vault door frosted with condensation. Unlike the others, this one hadn't been forced or neglected. It was shut with purpose. Emily pressed her hand to the metal. "It's cold, really cold." Jack noticed the ice forming near the edges. A faint vibration hummed through the door, more subtle than before but present. The thump returned, closer this time, muffled. From inside, he stepped back instinctively. There's something, or someone, behind that door. Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I think it's alive. They stood there for a moment, the weight of it settling over them. This door was different. Not just a barrier, it was a warning. Jack turned to leave to gather his thoughts when he noticed something scratched into the wall near the vault. 3 lines, repeated over and over. It didn't sleep. Emily traced the words with trembling fingers. Whatever's in there, it's been conscious this whole time. A low groan echoed through the ductwork above them, followed by another thump. Closer now, stronger. Jack backed away. We need to get out. We need to think. Prepare. Emily hesitated, then followed him. We can't just walk away. We're not, he said, but we're not opening that door without answers. As they returned to the central chamber, Jack turned one last time toward the frozen vault. The air around it felt heavier, charged. He didn't need Emily to confirm it. Whatever had been locked down here, someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to keep it hidden and contained. But containment never lasts forever. They returned to the frozen vault the next morning, equipped with thermal gear, lighting, and reinforced cutting tools. Emily had spent the night cross-referencing declassified documents, hunting for any mention of deep cell or the containment structure beneath them. She found nothing. It was as if the bunker never existed. Jack stood in front of the vault, jaw set. We open it slow, we stay together, we don't assume anything. Emily nodded. If there's a person inside, they might not be stable. Not after this long. Leo had insisted on joining them this time, rifle slung over his shoulder, just in case. The cutting process took over an hour. The frost clung stubbornly to the seams, the metal groaning as temperature differentials stressed its structure. When the final bolts gave way, the door creaked open just enough to release a blast of frigid air. It carried with it a smell that turned Jack's stomach, old sweat, antiseptic, and something stale like trapped decades. Inside, darkness, then movement. Emily's flashlight flicked over the room, walls padded with heavy insulation, floor lined with industrial rubber, a series of blinking monitors powered by an old generator tucked in a corner, and in the center, a figure, crouched, still. The light found a man, emaciated but unmistakably alive. He wore a dark green uniform, its patches faded beyond recognition. His hair was overgrown, his skin pale and clammy. But his eyes locked onto them the moment the beam hit his face. He didn't flinch, he didn't speak, he just stared. Emily stepped forward carefully. "Sir, can you hear me?" He didn't answer, but his lips parted slightly. Then he swayed. Jack rushed in and caught him before he hit the floor. The man was light, frighteningly so, but warm, alive, real. They laid him on a stretcher they'd brought for safety. Emily checked his pulse, steady though faint. "He's alive," she whispered. "My God." "He's been down here all this time." They examined his uniform more closely. A name tag barely legible through grime and wear. Rayner D. His dog tag confirmed it. Daniel Rayner. Blood type. Serial number. Date of enlistment. March 1962. Emily stared at the tag, her mouth slightly open. "That's impossible." Jack looked at her. "Why?" "Because that would make him over 80. But look at him. He's 30. Maybe." The man stirred, groaning weakly. His voice rasped, raw and dry. "Lights still on?" Emily leaned closer. "You're safe now. Can you tell us what happened?" He opened his mouth again, but only one word came out. "Sleep." Then he lost consciousness. They brought him to the upper level, into the light of day for what must have been the first time in decades. He didn't wake again that day. Emily stayed beside him, documenting everything, his vitals, his appearance, even the patches on his uniform, which bore a strange insignia she couldn't identify. Jack sat apart, eyes fixed on the tree line. The implications were heavy. This wasn't just a sealed chamber, it was a prison, and Daniel Rayner had been its sole occupant. Emily checked her notes again. There were rumors about cryogenic experiments during the Cold War, she said softly. Projects designed to put soldiers into deep sleep, but none of them worked. None that we know of. Jack looked at her. And if one did? Then we've just opened something the world forgot, or wanted to forget. As the sun set behind the trees, the air grew still. Jack didn't speak. He simply watched Daniel breathe, slow, shallow, steady. Whoever he was, whatever had been done to him, one thing was clear. He was never meant to be found. Daniel woke just before dawn. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the soft morning light streaming through the bunker's upper entry hatch. His breathing was shallow but rhythmic. Jack and Emily were nearby, both silent as he stirred, unsure what they would find when he finally spoke. His gaze drifted to the sky, clouds shifting gently overhead. His lips parted as if in disbelief. "I thought the sky was gone," he whispered. Emily moved closer, crouching at his side. "You've been asleep a long time. Do you know where you are?" He turned his head toward her, blinking slowly. "Not where, when?" Jack knelt beside her. "Daniel Rayner, that's your name, right?" A pause, then a faint nod. "You were part of something called Deep Cell, a containment project. Do you remember that?" Daniel's eyes closed, and for a moment Jack thought he'd slipped again. But then his voice came, rough, uncertain. There was a room, cold, bright lights. The hum never stopped. "I kept track by the hum. I think I counted years, through the changes in pitch." He opened his eyes again. "They said it would be fast, that I'd wake up different." Emily frowned. "You volunteered?" He nodded weakly. "I was dying, some disease. They wouldn't tell me what it was, but they said they could keep me alive, that I could sleep through it, be fixed on the other side. I wanted to live." I said yes. Jack looked away, jaw clenched. "They put me in the cell," Daniel continued. "They said I'd go under with the others, 6 of us. But when I woke up, it was quiet, empty, just me." Emily exchanged a glance with Jack. "Do you remember the others?" "Flashes," he said. "Voices, screams. I think some didn't make it. One went mad. There was something in his eyes." Like the cold never left him. He turned his gaze back to the clouds. "I stopped sleeping after a while, couldn't tell how long. They welded the door. I heard it. From inside." Emily placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You've been under for over 60 years. His brow furrowed. "Then it worked." Jack leaned forward. "You haven't aged. Not in any way we understand. Your body's intact. But your mind—" Daniel let out a breath that bordered on a laugh. "My mind's what they tested most." Silence settled over them for a moment, broken only by the wind in the trees. Then Daniel spoke again, voice suddenly sharper. "They left something down there." Jack looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I was alone," Daniel said. But I wasn't alone. There were nights with long stretches where I heard movement. Breathing, I called out. Nothing answered. But it was there. Watching. Emily's skin prickled. "Could it have been your imagination?" He looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes held something solid. It watched from the corners. It didn't speak. It didn't breathe like we do. But I wasn't the last thing they put down there. A chill passed between them. "I remember numbers," Daniel said, "over and over. Coordinates. They made me memorize them, in case of breach. Emergency protocols." He slowly reached for Emily's notebook. His fingers trembled as he wrote 6 digits. Coordinates that pointed to a location nearly 80 miles north. Emily's eyes widened. "There's another site." Jack exhaled slowly. "Then this isn't over." Daniel sank back into the stretcher, eyes already closing again. "You'll find it," he murmured. "But be careful. Some things weren't meant to wake." They didn't hear the helicopters until they were already overhead. 2 black models, military grade, circled once, then landed in the open field near the trench. The wind from their rotors sent dust and loose debris swirling. Jack and Emily shielded their eyes as figures in dark tactical gear disembarked, moving with precision and urgency. Leading them was a man in a weathered officer's coat. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable. A silver pin gleamed faintly at his collar. He didn't need to introduce himself. "Colonel Ashburn," Emily muttered under her breath. "He's real." He walked straight up to Jack. "Mr. Emery, I'm assuming you were the one who opened the hatch." Jack didn't answer. Ashburn turned to Emily next. "Dr. Harper, historian, civilian, you've made quite the mess." Emily squared her shoulders. "We found a living human being sealed inside a classified facility that doesn't appear on any map." Ashburn smiled thinly. "Yes, and that man should have stayed sealed." Jack stepped between them. "You knew he was down there." "I knew what was supposed to be down there," Ashburn said. "And I know the risks of it not staying buried." Emily's voice sharpened. "He's alive. He's a soldier." "And he's talking." Ashburn's tone was colder now. "Which is why we're here to take him into custody for national security." Jack's jaw tightened. "He's not a prisoner." Ashburn turned to his team. "Secure the subject. Sedate if necessary." Two soldiers moved forward, but Jack blocked their path. "You're not taking him." "You're not in a position to decide that," Ashburn said. Emily stepped beside Jack. "You said this was about national security. Then answer one question. Why was the door welded shut from the inside?" That gave Ashburn pause. For just a moment, his eyes flicked with something unspoken. Guilt, maybe, or memory. "Orders," he replied simply. "Classified. The details don't matter." "They matter to him," Jack snapped. "He remembers. The others. The cold." "Something else down there." Ashburn's expression darkened. "Then you've already spoken to him." "He gave us coordinates," Emily said. "There's another site. You know where it is, don't you?" Ashburn remained silent. "You can't bury this again," Jack said. "The world's going to find out." Ashburn sighed, almost with pity. "You think exposing this helps anyone?" "The projects from that era weren't just dangerous. They were unnatural. If you knew what was buried, you'd seal it twice over." "We don't bury the truth," Emily said. "Sometimes," Ashburn replied. "That's the only way to survive it." He turned to his men. "You have 24 hours. After that, we take control. If the subject isn't handed over willingly, we'll consider it hostile containment." Then he left, the helicopters lifting into the sky once more, leaving only dust and silence behind. Back in the bunker, Daniel lay in uneasy sleep. Jack paced, fury simmering beneath his calm. Emily sat with her notes, rechecking the coordinates, her hands trembling. "They'll come with force," Jack said. "He gave us a deadline." Emily looked up. "Then we need to decide. Do we fight to protect him or disappear with him before they return?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He stared at Daniel, this strange man caught between centuries, between science and suffering. "He's not just evidence," Jack finally said. "He's a person, and he trusted us." Emily nodded. "Then we don't let them take him." They waited until dusk before going back underground. Ashburn's threat hung heavy in the air, but it only hardened their resolve. Jack and Emily returned to the bunker alone, leaving Leo to keep watch above. Daniel was still resting, stable but distant. His mind seemed to drift in and out, tethered loosely to the present. They needed more. Answers, context, anything that would help them understand what had really happened beneath the surface. Emily returned to the central chamber first, her flashlight sweeping the dust-coated terminals and rusted lockers. Jack followed, checking the deeper corridors for signs of movement. The cold still lingered around the sealed vault, but they didn't approach it again. Not yet. Near the back of the observation room, Emily found it. A narrow filing cabinet nearly rusted shut. It took Jack and a crowbar to wrench it open. Inside were folders, most blank or water-damaged beyond recognition, but beneath them, wrapped in brittle canvas, was a leather-bound journal. Its cover was scorched at one edge, its pages yellowed and dense with notes written in a tight, clinical hand. Emily opened to the first entry and began to read aloud. "Project Omega, Phase 3, Trial logs, Lt. Col Harris. Jack raised an eyebrow. That name's not on anything else. Emily flipped through quickly. It's all here. The selection process. Volunteers chosen from critical cases. Terminal illnesses, psychological instability, even war trauma. They promised them survival. Reinvention. A second chance. Jack scanned the wall where the old monitors still blinked faintly, and instead they buried them. The journal described the protocols. 6 subjects, each placed in isolation, monitored for resilience to deep state suspension, what the program called temporal stasis through neurocompression. The science made little sense, but the implications were chilling. Subject 1 died during the initial transfer. Subject 2 became violently unstable and was terminated. Subject 3 breached his containment and was never found. Subject 4 self-harmed repeatedly before sedation was made permanent. Subject 5, Daniel Rayner, entered stasis without resistance. Subject 6 was never named, only referenced as the Control. Emily froze. Control? That means Daniel wasn't the experiment. He was the baseline. Jack leaned closer. Then who or what was Subject 6? She flipped toward the end of the journal. The last entries became erratic, as if the writer had been rushing or under extreme stress. The final page read only, "We can't shut it down, sealing the chamber. Rayner shows signs of resilience. Others lost." 6 is awake. Emily closed the journal slowly. They sealed Daniel in, not to protect him, but to separate him from it. Jack's voice was low. Then whatever Subject 6 became, it's still down there, and it was never meant to be retrieved. They both turned toward the map projected in the main console. A second site connected through coordinates Daniel had whispered. The journal mentioned it too, briefly. A contingency site, a fallback structure in Vermont, unmarked, unlisted. Emily stepped back, her mind racing. This wasn't an isolated experiment. It was a network. Jack's hands curled into fists. Ashburn's trying to contain something that's already breached. The implication was clear. If Project Omega continued in any form, if Subject 6 was still active, then Daniel's survival wasn't a miracle. It was a warning. Back upstairs, Leo met them with urgency in his voice. "We've got movement. 2 unmarked vans down the road. Half an hour out." Emily looked to Jack. "We need to move him, now." Jack nodded. "Grab the gear. Leave the journal." Emily hesitated. "Are you sure?" Jack gave her a grim smile. "If they're willing to kill to protect it, then it's the one thing that has to stay behind." They moved fast, packing what little they could and lifting Daniel with care. As they prepared to leave, Jack cast one last look at the hatch, open, silent, waiting. This was no longer about curiosity. It was survival. They didn't have much time. The vans were moving fast, unmarked but unmistakably government. Leo had spotted them down the ridge, cutting across the tree line with urgency. Ashburn wasn't bluffing. 24 hours had passed, and now the operation was shifting into force. Jack secured Daniel in the back of the truck, carefully wrapping him in blankets to shield him from the cold. The man barely stirred, exhausted from days of mental strain and decades of containment. He was speaking less, but when he did, it was clearer, sharper, and always the same message: don't go back. Emily reviewed the topographic maps she'd pulled from the county office the day before. "There's an old maintenance tunnel connected to the ridge," she said. "It used to service the original bunker power lines. If it's intact, we can use it to reach the northern access road without being seen." Leo shook his head. "That tunnel hasn't been used in 50 years. It could be caved in, flooded, or worse." Jack looked at him. "It's a better option than walking straight into Ashburn's hands." Emily folded the map. "We don't take Daniel through the woods. Not in his condition. The tunnel's our only chance." They packed fast. Emily took only her notes and the recorder. Jack grabbed the essentials: first aid, water, flashlight batteries, food. Leo kept watch as the sky darkened. The clouds were thickening. Rain was coming. They reached the entrance to the tunnel just as the first drops began to fall. Hidden beneath a collapsed section of fencing and overgrown brush, The metal hatch groaned as Jack forced it open. Inside, the air was thick and stale, but passable. The ground sloped downward, and rusted utility pipes lined the ceiling like skeletal fingers reaching into the dark. Their footsteps echoed behind them, distorted by the moisture and age. Jack carried Daniel with effort, his strength waning with each step. Emily led the way with the only working lamp, her breath short and rapid. "We should have had more time," she said. "We weren't ready." "No one ever is," Jack replied. A few hundred feet in, the tunnel narrowed. A section of the ceiling had partially collapsed, debris scattered across their path. Leo cleared the rubble as best he could, but progress slowed. Every second felt like it dragged the odds further from their favor. They reached a fork, one path leading deeper underground, the other bending sharply north. Emily hesitated. "This isn't on the map." Jack looked between the paths. "Instinct says right," Leo grunted. "Instinct didn't put us in this mess." They went right. The tunnel opened again after 20 minutes of tight turns and low ceilings. At last they saw light, natural, distant, faint. The northern access hatch. Freedom. But just as they approached, a low rumble vibrated the walls behind them. Engines. They weren't alone anymore. Jack passed Daniel to Leo. "Go, get him out." Emily turned back. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down." "No, Jack." He raised a hand. "No time to argue. Get him to that Vermont site. Find out what's still alive out there. Expose it if you have to. Just finish what we started." Reluctantly, Emily followed Leo through the exit. Jack turned back into the dark, crowbar in hand, heart pounding. As the rumble grew louder, he knew this was just the beginning. The bunker hadn't just opened a door beneath the earth, it had opened a war above it. The rain fell harder as Emily and Leo emerged from the tunnel. The truck was waiting, half concealed beneath a grove of pines. They loaded Daniel inside, wrapped him tightly against the cold, and didn't speak until the engine roared to life. Back beneath the earth, Jack waited alone. Footsteps echoed first. Then beams of light pierced the tunnel's damp shadows. Ashburn entered, flanked by 3 operatives, all armed. Jack stood motionless, crowbar lowered but ready. Ashburn's voice cut through the space like a blade. "You had your chance, Emery." Jack didn't move. "He's not your property." "He was government-issued," Ashburn replied. "And you've compromised a national-level security operation." "No," Jack said. "I uncovered a crime. You buried a man alive." Ashburn stepped forward. "You have no idea what's at stake. You think this is about ethics. This is about survival. You don't know what you're protecting." "Neither do you," Jack said, "but he's not going back underground." Ashburn raised a hand. "Bring him in." Now. 2 men moved. Jack braced. Then the first scream rang out. It wasn't Jack. It wasn't anyone from the confrontation. It came from deeper in the tunnel. Low, guttural, wrong. The operatives froze. Another scream followed, this time closer. Not human. Ashburn's eyes widened. "What did you do?" Jack stepped back. "You said something was still alive." "You never meant Daniel." Ashburn turned to his men. "Retreat. Back topside, now." But it was too late. From the darkness emerged a figure, tall, gaunt, slick with moisture and something else. Its skin was stretched unnaturally, its limbs too long, its eyes wide and black. One of the operatives opened fire. The thing didn't stop. In seconds, it was chaos. Flashlights swung wildly. Bullets ricocheted and screams filled the corridor. Jack dove aside as one soldier was dragged into the shadows. Another fell trying to flee. Ashburn stumbled, his hand clawing at the wall, panic now replacing control. Jack moved fast. He grabbed Ashburn by the collar and yanked him through a service hatch, slamming the panel behind them. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by Ashburn's ragged breath. "I told you," Jack said. "Whatever you sealed down there, it's awake." Ashburn wiped blood from his face. "We were trying to contain it. Not him. It." Jack leaned close. "Then why leave Daniel with it?" "He was the only one who survived contact," Ashburn whispered. "He didn't mutate, didn't collapse. He endured." We needed him to keep it asleep. He was the anchor. Jack stared. You used him like a leash. Ashburn didn't deny it. That thing, he said, isn't just biological. It disrupts thought, memory, time. The others dissolved mentally before their bodies even changed. Jack stood. And now that Daniel's free, it's unchained. They both knew what came next. Outside, Emily reached the mountain road just as the first sounds of combat echoed from below. She turned the truck sharply, heading north, pushing the vehicle faster than it should have gone. Daniel stirred in the back seat. His voice was soft, but lucid. You let it out. Emily glanced at him. We didn't open that vault. His eyes didn't leave the trees flashing by the window. Didn't have to. I was the door. The next morning brought silence. Emily parked the truck on a remote overlook, the forest stretching endlessly below. There was no sign of pursuit, no helicopters, no agents, just fog and wind whispering through the trees. Daniel was resting, his breathing steady but shallow. She checked his vitals again. No fever, no trauma. But his mind, that remained elusive. Jack hadn't answered her last message. Leo sat on a rock nearby, scanning the tree line through binoculars. Nothing for miles. If they're coming, they're doing it slow. Emily nodded, then powered on her laptop. She uploaded the recordings, Daniel's voice, the interior of the bunker, the confrontation with Ashburn's team. She didn't wait for permission. She sent the files to every secure contact she had, journalists, whistleblower forums, private researchers. Truth wasn't theirs to hide anymore. Hours passed. A single headline hit the dark web. Buried soldier found alive in decommissioned facility. Cold War project uncovered. By nightfall, the footage had leaked. Forums exploded. Conspiracy threads multiplied. Former military contractors stepped forward anonymously, validating the insignias, the protocol lingo, even the name, Project Omega. The government denied everything. Emily knew they would. But silence, once cracked, spreads like wildfire. Back inside the cabin they'd found, Daniel sat up for the first time unaided. He looked around as if seeing things for the first time. Modern lighting, new materials, digital displays. Everything's too quiet, he said. Back then, the hum never stopped. Emily crouched beside him. What you went through, it's not your fault. Daniel looked at her, his expression distant. I volunteered. I agreed to be changed. I thought they'd save me. Jack arrived just before midnight. He looked exhausted, soaked with sweat and dirt, limping slightly. His hands were scraped, but his eyes were clear. Emily met him at the door. How bad? Jack didn't answer immediately. Ashburn's gone. His team too. Whatever came out of that vault, it didn't follow me, but it didn't die either. Leo stood behind them. So what now, run forever? No, Jack said. We dig in. We document. We protect him. Daniel turned toward them, hearing every word. I need to understand what I am, he said. Jack stepped closer. You're not a weapon. You're not a project. You're a survivor. Daniel shook his head. But why me? Why did I survive when the others didn't? Emily answered softly. Because you fought. Even when they buried you, you didn't give in. For a long moment, no one spoke. The world outside continued, unaware of the fracture that had been exposed, but inside that quiet room, 3 people understood something fundamental had changed. The line between experiment and existence had blurred, and the man at the center of it was still trying to find his place. Later that night, as Jack stood watch outside, he opened a small notebook, one he hadn't touched in years. He tore out a blank page and began to write. Michael, I used to believe that duty ended with the mission, that after the war, after the loss, I could just go quiet, fade out. But I was wrong. Some battles find you again. This one did, and I think you'd understand why I stayed. He folded the page and tucked it into his jacket. The fire crackled behind him. The story wasn't over. But now the truth was loose in the world. Emily found the second site buried in an old Department of Energy memo. It was a single line, an abandoned infrastructure initiative in northern Vermont, dated 1965. No location, just a project code, Omega 03. She cross-referenced it with Daniel's coordinates and narrowed the location to a dense woodland area near the Canadian border. Jack, Daniel, and Leo spent 2 days preparing. They gathered supplies, secured safe routes, and mapped alternate exits. Emily compiled every shred of information they'd uncovered, schematics, testimonies, the leaked footage, and backed it up across 6 different cloud servers. By the time they reached the site, the weather had turned colder. The leaves were falling fast, covering the old service road that wound through the trees. At the end, hidden beneath layers of moss and collapsed fencing, was another hatch. Smaller than the first, but familiar. Daniel stood in front of it silently. His hand hovered above the surface. He didn't touch it. "This one," he said, "was for Subject 3. Emily's breath caught. "The one they lost," Daniel nodded. "He was unstable before the procedure. I remember the fear, not his, theirs. They thought the process would correct him, but it didn't." Leo examined the welds. "This hatch wasn't sealed, just locked. Like someone went in but never came out." Jack glanced around. "Or someone came out." They entered carefully. The passage beneath was dry, unlike the main facility. Cleaner, less decay, fewer signs of abandonment. If anything, it looked maintained. Emily led them through narrow corridors until they reached a chamber lined with cryopods. All were shattered. Glass shards littered the floor. The labels were scraped off. One pod remained intact, but empty. Daniel stood before it, eyes distant. "This was his," he said. "Subject 3, Marcus Hale. He was younger than me, barely 20. They said he had no family, no ties. A perfect candidate." Jack scanned the room. "There's no blood, no signs of struggle. Whatever happened here didn't happen recently." Emily moved to the control panel. One of the monitors flickered as she activated auxiliary power. A data log appeared, last entry dated August 4, 1987. She read aloud, "Subject 3 breached pod integrity. Observation ceased. Relocation unsuccessful. Recommend full site abandonment." Leo frowned. "Relocation? You think they tried to move him?" Daniel shook his head. "No, they followed him. He didn't run. He led them." Jack's voice dropped. "Then he's still out there." Emily looked up. "And he's been out longer than Daniel. 36 years. A sudden understanding settled over them. If Daniel was stable, and Subject 3 wasn't, then the creature in Maine might not have been Subject 6. It could have been Marcus Hale. And if he'd remained uncontained this entire time, there might be more than one site hiding remnants of Project Omega. Emily turned to Daniel. "Do you remember the others? The final 2? He hesitated. "Bits. A woman. Subject 4. She didn't speak. And Subject 6 never had a name. They brought him in strapped down. He didn't volunteer." Jack said, "You said 6 was awake. But if Marcus escaped first..." Daniel looked down. "Then he might have been the reason 6 woke up," Emily whispered. "We're chasing a sequence we don't understand." Jack nodded slowly. "But it started here, in these chambers, with promises and silence." Leo walked to the exit. "What do we do now?" Emily answered without hesitation. "We keep going. We find the next hatch and the next until there are no more." Daniel stepped beside her. "And if we find the others?" Jack's voice was steady. "Then we decide what the world needs to know, and what should never be repeated." The wind outside had picked up, but none of them turned back. 2 weeks later, they were offered a deal. A representative from an undisclosed agency, polite, calm, nameless, approached Jack outside a gas station in northern New York. He handed over a sealed envelope and spoke softly. "You've proven your point. The public has their spectacle. Now let's avoid further chaos." Inside the envelope was a contract. Government protection, full amnesty, a new identity. In exchange, silence. Daniel would be monitored indefinitely under secured medical observation. Jack and Emily would walk away, no threats. Just the cold edge of a system offering compromise. Jack burned the document without reading the fine print. Back at the safe house, Emily watched as the last of their data backups uploaded to an encrypted archive. They'd learned to stay mobile, change locations often. Daniel had begun walking daily, slower than before but steadier. He still didn't sleep more than a few hours at a time. The hum never truly left him. Jack told her about the offer. She didn't look surprised. "They want us to disappear because they can't." He nodded. "I don't want to disappear. Not this time." Emily sat beside him. "Then what do we do?" Jack didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were heavier now, not just about survival but about meaning. Every step they took uncovered another secret, another person lost to time and silence. "I think we document," he said finally, "on our terms. Not for shock, for clarity." She nodded slowly. "We finish the work." That night, Daniel stood under the stars for a long time. Jack joined him in silence, hands in his pockets. "You ever wonder if they were right?" Daniel asked. "Who?" "The ones who said we shouldn't be woken up." Jack glanced over. "No, I wonder why they were afraid to face what they did." Daniel exhaled. "I used to think waking up would mean being fixed, but it just means you're aware again, aware of everything that's broken." Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then maybe that's the only way we start to heal." The next morning, Emily announced her decision. "I'm going public, with or without backup. I'll redact locations, names, even faces if needed, but people need to know what the Cold War really cost. Not just lives, memory, identity." Jack supported her fully, but he chose differently. He declined another contact from the agency. No deals, no cover. Just distance. He and Daniel traveled west, quietly, through back roads and forgotten highways, searching for signals, anomalies, whispers of more hatches. They didn't talk much, but a quiet bond had formed, unspoken and steady. Leo stayed behind, watching the east coast, tracking chatter, studying the patterns. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but he had the instincts of one. He made it clear, if anything moved in the dark, he'd see it first. One morning, Daniel left a note on the kitchen table. "Had a dream. A place I've seen before, north, cold, remote. I'll go alone." Jack read it in silence. He didn't chase him. He knew this part of the journey wasn't his to follow. Days later, a message arrived through a secure line, just coordinates and 4 words. "It's not over yet." Emily read them aloud. Her voice was steady. "We have to be ready." Jack looked out at the fading daylight. "We've already begun." They didn't know what they'd find next, but they knew one thing for certain. The story was no longer buried, and they wouldn't be either. They returned to Maine one last time. The field was quiet now, overgrown. The trench long filled with rain and leaves. But the hatch still sat where they'd left it, sealed again by Jack's own hands, reinforced with steel and concrete. Emily brought the plaque. It was simple. Just a slab of brushed metal, unpolished, with a few words etched into its surface. "In memory of the forgotten, Project Omega." They installed it at dawn. No speeches, no cameras, just presence. Leo stood back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the tree line. Jack placed a gloved hand on the plaque, letting the cold sink into his skin. Emily knelt beside the hatch, fingers brushing the soil. Daniel wasn't there. He hadn't been seen in weeks, but they all felt his absence like a weight in the air. "I don't think he's coming back," Leo said quietly. Jack nodded. "He's found his own path." They didn't speak of it again. Instead, they buried the journal. Wrapped in layers of waxed cloth, it was placed in a steel box and lowered into a dry pocket near the hatch. Not to hide it, but to protect it, for whoever might come next. Not far from it, Jack left something else, a letter, handwritten, sealed in plastic. "To the next who digs. No, this wasn't just metal and memory. It was a man, and a choice. Make yours better than ours." Emily stepped back, eyes misted. "It feels like we're closing a door." "Maybe," Jack said. "Or just marking the threshold." Later, at the edge of the property, he pulled out an old notebook, its pages worn and weathered by time. He turned to a blank sheet and wrote the last entry. "Michael, I think I finally understand. It wasn't about following orders, it was about facing what they wouldn't. You were braver than me, but I'm trying now. I hope that counts for something. He folded the page and slid it behind the plaque, tucked deep between metal and stone. Emily smiled. You ready? Jack looked around one final time. Yeah, let's go. They walked back together, the field behind them quiet again, the forest whispering through branches. Later that night, Jack lit a fire outside their temporary cabin. It wasn't large, but it was warm. He sat alone, staring into the flames, letting the silence breathe. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't a fixer or a cleaner or a man trying to outrun his ghosts. He was just a witness now, one who had chosen to stay when it mattered. As the fire died down, he felt something shift, not fear, not warning, just peace. Somewhere out in the dark, Daniel walked under stars. Somewhere deeper, beneath soil and steel, the truth remained. But tonight, it was enough to have faced it, and to know they were not forgotten. A year passed. Emily stood beneath bright lights, the rustle of an audience settling in the dark beyond her. She spoke not just as a historian, but as a witness, a custodian of a truth that had once been buried so deep it nearly devoured the people who found it. Her presentation was careful, but never cold. She told of lives interrupted, of choices made in silence, of the hidden costs of progress and fear. She never spoke Daniel's name, nor Jack's, nor Leo's, but their story echoed in every word. The footage she played sparked discussion across the country. News outlets speculated, forums dissected every phrase, and former officials, finally emboldened, came forward with slivers of their own memories. Some denied, some confessed. The conversation grew. After the talk, Emily walked quietly through city streets. The world felt no safer, but it felt less alone. Jack watched her broadcast from a motel on the far edge of Montana. His face was more lined, his hair shot through with silver, but his eyes stayed sharp. He turned off the TV and packed his bag for another long drive. He didn't know where he was headed, only that the road ahead still called. Leo sent word every few months, updates, rumors, patterns in the noise. Sometimes there was nothing but static, but sometimes there was something more. A missing person report, an unexplained power surge, a mention of a symbol carved in steel. None as clear as what they'd found in Maine, but every lead was another reminder that the past still breathed just beneath the surface. Daniel disappeared. No one saw him leave. No one saw where he went. Some said he was seen heading north, moving with purpose through the wilds of Alaska. Others believed he blended back into the world's forgotten places, a ghost who'd lived between centuries and now finally wanted to see what life could be. Jack received a postcard with no return address. The photo was of a snowbound mountain and a single word, scratched onto the sky with black ink, found. On the back, a line, Hatch 4 North, waiting. Jack smiled for the first time in months. He tucked the postcard into his notebook and sat for a while, letting the silence settle. The truth was out. The world was watching. But so many questions remained. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, Jack felt hope, a cautious, fragile thing. For all they had unearthed, for all the pain and loss, they had also found connection and courage and a strange sort of peace. He wondered how many more hatches waited out there, hidden in frozen ground or desert rock, marking the boundaries between what the world believed and what it refused to see. And he knew somehow that the answers wouldn't be easy or safe or final, but the search would go on. If this story gripped you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more untold discoveries. And don't miss the video on screen now. It continues this journey into the unknown.